The WAFB Podcast Network is sponsored by Neighbors Federal Credit Union.
All right, it's here. Kind of snuck up on us. We've waited all year for it. And I'll tell you what, this week there's been a different energy. LSU, USC, to open up the 2024 football season for all of us here in Baton Rouge. The game's out in Vegas. It's unfortunate it's not on a home campus in the Coliseum there or right here in Death Valley. But you know what? It is what it is. I know a lot of people are traveling out there to the Sin City, as it's known, to take in what I think is going to be one of the best college football games this season. So LSU, I mean, we've talked about it all offseason. Everybody kind of knows this. They've lost 4 straight season openers under Brian Kelly, both of those against Florida State, and those really put a damper in the season from the get-go because it doesn't really matter what you do after that, at least in the 4-team college football playoff era. You know, your back's against the wall. You can't really lose another game. If you do, the national championship's off the table. Not the case this year with the 12-team playoff, but still, it's high stakes, as our LSU football special is known, airing Thursday night here. This game has a lot riding on it, and I know there's 12 regular season games for every team, but if you can get this win, if you're LSU, and start the season off with a W, which you haven't done since 2019, it would mean a lot. It would really set you down a trajectory that would really help you and just start building that momentum early so you don't have to build it at the wrong time, in the middle of the season, at the end of the season. So this, I really mean it, and I think this is an obvious statement, is a must-win game. LSU's favored by 4.5. I think they were favored against Florida State last year, if I'm not mistaken. So that doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm just putting it out there. And then the over-under is 64.5. So I'm going to give you a little preview, a little prediction here, my thoughts. I've been to every single LSU football practice that's been open to the media since the spring. All of the fall practices I've gotten to film, stay for the entire time. I've seen this team a lot, and I've watched a little bit of USC film as well. So I'm not just sitting here reading magazines, giving you stats, blah, blah, blah. I'm giving you first-person eyewitness things that I've noticed and giving you my best prediction of how I see this thing playing out. Let me tell you a little bit about USC. New quarterback, Caleb Williams, gone. Miller Moss was the MVP of their bowl game in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville, which they won by a couple touchdowns. 6 touchdowns. I think he was, well over 50% completion percentage. Looked good, looked pretty good. They're replacing a decent amount at wide receiver. His go-to receiver is gone. A guy that caught 7 passes in that bowl game. He's out. They got to replace him. They've got some young guys coming up who have shown flashes. Zachariah Branch, Mekhi Lemon, Deuce Robinson are a couple names to know. They haven't been that wide receiver 1 alpha dog yet. They're hoping and expecting they can emerge and be those kind of guys. They could be, they could not be. They brought in Woody Marks, a running back from Mississippi State who's played 4 years of college ball, put up some pretty decent numbers over there, and they've got 2 returning offensive line starters. They've recruited the position well, but some newness there. So really, it's a decent amount of inexperience. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of talent. That's what you're going up against with USC's offense. Defensively, you've probably seen this guy on social media, Bear Alexander. He quote tweeted something Will Campbell said about, hey, we're not going to Vegas to, go to Caesar's Palace and gamble. We're going to get in a fist fight and win a football game. He had something to say about that, whatever. He's their leader along the defensive line. Other than that, they've got 2 transfers that are projected to start and a guy that played a little bit last year, but not a lot. So they're pretty inexperienced at D-line. I'll get more into this momentarily. I think LSU is going to have the edge there, O-line versus D-line on the offensive side. They got good linebackers, a returner from last year who's played 4 or 5 years of college football, had a lot of tackles. They brought a guy in from Oregon State that had, I think, 160 some odd tackles in a couple of years over there. So they look pretty good at that position. And they brought in a lot of transfers in that defensive back room, but it's a lot of guys that are proven, very experienced college football players, 2 of which came from UCLA, where USC's new defensive coordinator came from, Danton Lynn there, who they're very excited about. Let me tell you a little bit about him because, look, USC and LSU are very, very comparable. It's the same kind of team. New talent on offense, should be good offenses, but the defenses were both terrible last year. USC allowed 34 points per game, 430 yards per game last year. LSU allowed like 28, but 33 points per game in SEC play. I'm telling you things you already know. They weren't good on defense. What this game comes down to is which new defensive coordinator can have his defense in a better position from the get-go. The offenses will both score. The offenses are both good. But D'Anton Lynn versus Blake Baker, who's the better coordinator? Who can have their defense ready to play day one, game one, and go win a football game? That's what this is going to come down to. Lynn was at UCLA. He chopped 11 points per game off the totals from 2022 to 2023. The run defense was better. UCLA allowed 81 yards per game last year against the run, and they had 43 sacks. What does that tell you? His defense has stopped the run, and they like to get after the quarterback. So on paper, the DC looks proven, looks good, but the same with Blake Baker. He led a very good defense at Missouri. The question is, who can have their personnel and the players more prepared, more ready to go, more understanding of what the system is in game one? Not game 6, not game 10, game 1. That's what the game's going to come down to. Here are a couple keys. Here's how LSU will win this game against USC. Watching the bowl game tape, because Miller Moss didn't play much last year. They had Caleb Williams, obviously. Moss, put the ball in harm's way a lot. A lot of blitzes coming at him from Louisville's side of things. That's who they played in the Holiday Bowl. And he would be backpedaling, and he would give his receivers opportunities to make plays. He would put the ball in bad positions, though. Louisville's DBs didn't make the play. The receivers did. Okay? So I've seen it at fall camp. LSU's DBs have had a tendency to, fight back and show that they can make those plays. Get their hands on passes, intercept balls, tip them, things of that nature. So I've seen it. With my own eyes, they can do it. Will that transfer into the game? I believe so. That's something they need to do. With that, I mentioned this before, Miller Moss loved a guy named Taj Washington. Like, that was the guy, first read, first look, that's where the ball was going. He's going to have to find a new go-to receiver. So can you force him to make some bad decisions? There were times where Moss would look at one receiver and not look anywhere else, and he was making that throw no matter what was in front of him. And in the bowl game, it worked out for him. But can your linebackers be in a position to pick off a pass? Can your DB make a break on the ball like Ashton Stamps can, like P.J. Woodland can, and make a play and force a bad Miller Moss decision? Because it's there. I'm watching the guy's eyes when he takes the snap. He's looking and locking in on one dude. He does not go through his reads very often. So I think there's going to be plays to be made. It would not surprise me if LSU wins the turnover margin and comes up with a couple interceptions off of Miller Moss. Additionally, with the defense, got to shut down the run. USC loves to pass the football. They don't run it much, so you need to turn them completely one-dimensional. Last year, I watched the LSU bowl game back, the ReliaQuest Bowl. To me, it seemed like guys were out there, they were doing their own thing. They were playing individual football, not team football. They were trying to get the TFL themselves, making moves that maybe aren't friendly to the defense, putting other guys in bad positions. Bo Davis is one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. So the question is, how much better can the sum of the parts be versus the talent? LSU had talent last year on defense, but how much better can the group be as one working together? How much better are the guys technically in gap responsibility, in understanding what they need to do on a certain personnel set, and their shifts and their alignment, all of that? I think Bo Davis is going to have those guys ready to go. They may not be some big, flashy All-American type names along that defensive line like Jacobian Guillory, Gio Paez, Sean Washington. None of these guys you probably have heard of if you don't live in Baton Rouge or an LSU fan. But I think that they're going to play good, assignment-sound football, shut down USC's run game. Not that they have much of a run game at all. Additionally, the Trojans have 3 new offensive line starters, as I already mentioned, so they're pretty new there. I think there's something to be said about sending some exotic blitzes, confusing those guys, and winning that battle up front. The last couple things, attack the edges on offense. I know it's a new defense from USC's bowl game, but Louisville ran the ball well. The running back had 161 yards on 23 carries because they did a lot of off tackle, they did a lot of outside zone. I don't think the answer is running it up the middle. We know LSU's going to run the football. Will Campbell said they're going to run the football. Declarative statement. That's it. They're going to run the football. They're going to try to control this game, unlike last year where they were scoring 7 points a minute and the defense was always on the field. They're going to move methodically down the field, mix it up with the run and the pass, but they're going to hang their hat on running the football behind an offensive line that's one of the best in the country, and with a running back group that is very underrated with Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson, John Emery, and a couple other guys. So I think you got to go outside with the runs, maybe some passes as well. Get Garrett Nussmeier out on the edge to find Mason Taylor, Kamorian Pimpton, things like that, even checking it down to the running backs. That's a lot of information I just threw at you, but let me bring it back to the point that I think I hammered home the most. This game will come down to defense. Both offenses will score. Both offenses have talent. Joe Sloan's an amazing offensive coordinator. Lincoln Riley is an elite-level play caller. They are going to put up points. That's why the over-under is 64.5, which honestly I think is too low. So if I'm giving you a prediction there, it's going to go over that 64.5. Both offenses will score. Again, which defense is better? Both were terrible last year. Both have new defensive coordinators. I think LSU's got the edge. I'm sticking with my guy Phil Steele here. He put out his projections for which defense will be better. He thinks LSU is going to chop some points off, chop some yards off. He doesn't think USC is going to get a whole lot better. So I'm rocking with him. I'm rocking with LSU. I think the Tigers defensively under Blake Baker, I've seen it in fall camp. There's a different energy. There's a different drive. And I think that we're going to see that in game one. It's not going to be a thing where it's going to develop over the course of the season. They're going to come out guns a-blazing game one with something to prove. So give me LSU to win this football game. And I think they're going to cover the spread too. 4.5. I got LSU winning. I think they're going to win it by something like a touchdown. And they're going to play much better complementary football than last year. Last year it was all about the flashy offense and the terrible defense. This season I think it's going to be better offense with It's going to be a little worse offense from a production standpoint, but still very solid and a much better defense. And that's going to, like Brian Kelly said, make the overall team better and be in a better position to win football games versus last year. So there it is. I think LSU comes out week one, game one here against USC in Vegas, wins, covers, starts 1-0 for the first time since 2019. Let me know what you think in the comment section.